Hi and welcome to today's vlog. And you may have noticed if you've been watching these videos regularly that I'm recording from a slightly different angle. That is because my good friend Linda doesn't like Artex ceilings. So I'm trying to make sure the recording doesn't show Artex ceiling. I don't know if there's a word for a phobia of Artex ceilings. But anyway, Linda, just for you, I've tried to not show the Artex ceiling. Wasn't my choice. It was here when we moved in. But there you go. On to today's subject. I've mentioned in a previous video that Sue and I, my wife Sue and I, are kind of very different from one another. They do say, don't they, that opposites attract, and maybe that's part of the reason why we get on so well most of the time, even though we are very different. One of the ways that we are different is in or let's put it this way, Sue doesn't really get my sense of humour. When I first went into circuit in the potteries, in the circuit was to us then, as early 30s, this elderly minister, well, he probably was younger then than I am now, which is a bit sobering. But anyway, an elderly minister called Rafe Dale, and he had a kind of very dry sense of humour. And his wife, who was quite diminutive, I think her name was Kath, but I may be wrong. She had a wonderful habit. Whenever he told a joke, even if it was the 20th time he'd told it, she would dutifully laugh at his joke. Well, Sue very rarely laughs at my jokes, but anyway, we live with that. Excuse me, I haven't managed to teach her my sense of humour. But our differences come out in all sorts of different ways. For example, currently we're preparing to move home in a couple of months' time when I retire, and the methods of packing that we adopt are very different. Let's put it like this: if I'm packing, I will get a box and I'll put stuff in it, fill the box. That is a box done. Whereas Sue, she likes to get everything out of the cupboard, spread it all over the floor. And I say, well, let's get a box packed. She says, no, we've got to make sure that the right things go in the right boxes, which is a very different way of doing it from the way I do it. But we're both a bit frustrated with each other in terms of our packing, but we get along. One of the things that Sue reminds me of, and it is a reality of life, is that some people are what you might call task-oriented. In other words, their focus is in getting a job done. Other people are more people-oriented. They're more interested in the people involved and taking care of them than focusing too much on the task in hand. Let me give you an example. When Sue and I are leading a home group, if we've got a set agenda, some questions to work through, a Bible passage to look at, my initial focus will be on trying to get through those questions, that study, in the time that we've got allocated. Well, Sue obviously kind of works with that, but she's more of a people person. So if during the course of the discussion in the home group, a particular issue arises that's it needs some attention in a person's situation or life, Sue will focus on that. And it doesn't matter all that much to her if she doesn't answer all the questions in the study. So again, if we're both leading a group, we kind of tend to help each other and try and see things from each other's point of view. So it's a question of working together. And I want to ask you the question, do you think Jesus was a people person or a task-oriented person? Of course, our initial response would probably be to say he was a people person because he loved being with people. He didn't spend much time in a building, a synagogue or at the temple. He spent the time with people and sometimes surprising people that the religious authorities didn't think he should be with. The tax collectors, the sinners, the prostitutes. And time and again we read in the Gospels Jesus had compassion on a group or on a person Time and again we read how he was surrounded by crowds, but stopped for the individual who he saw in need. Bartimaeus by the roadside, Zacchaeus up a tree, the woman at the well. So clearly Jesus was a people person. He spent time with people. He came to love people. He told the story of the lost sheep and how the shepherd went looking for the one, left the 99, went looking for the one. The one is important. Jesus was no doubt a people person, and yet at the same time he was in some ways a task-oriented person. At the heart of what he was about was to fulfill the task, the role, the mission that God the Father had given to him. In the synagogue in Capernaum, right at the beginning of his ministry, he reads from the prophet Isaiah, the prophecy of Isaiah, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor," etc., etc. Jesus had that clear sense of vocation, of calling, of mission. He said, "I only speak what I hear the Father speak, and only do what I see the Father doing." He was clearly intent on fulfilling God the Father's purpose for his life. And so when the time came to go to Jerusalem, though the disciples were fearful, they didn't want him to go there, they had an inkling of what might happen. Jesus, we're told, set his face like flint to go to Jerusalem, or was resolutely heading for Jerusalem. Jesus was on a mission to fulfill the Father's commission. Jesus knew that his life would lead to the cross, because that was God's way of paying the price for the sin of human beings. So Jesus somehow combined wonderfully the ability to be a people person, although at the same time he wasn't afraid, was he, of upsetting people, the religious leaders in particular. So he was a people person. He loved people. He came to draw people back to God, but he was also intent on fulfilling the purpose for which God has sent him into the world. And it seems to me that if we are to be a church, the church of Jesus Christ, a local church in the image of Christ, we've somehow not got to combine those two elements. And so a healthy church has both within it both people person, those who love people, who interact with people, who recognize the needs of people, who have compassion on people, who love people, but also the task people who see the need to get a job done, who fulfill roles, who, if there's a project, would work towards that project. But it's whether we can, as a local church, combine those two elements. Some churches, if they have too many or an overabundance of task people, then maybe there's something that church fellowship don't feel loved. But on the other hand, if everybody's in a church or a majority or a big majority of people are people person, then sometimes tasks that need doing get left undone. So we need to get that balance. And I want to ask you, are you a people person or are you a task-oriented person? And I guess there's a bit of elements of both in all of us, aren't there? But if we are, like me, more task-oriented, maybe we need to pray that God will give us a greater love for people, empathy for people. If we're a people person who spend our time with people loving, then we need to understand that sometimes we need to focus on the task in hand. And we need to understand where each other's coming from. So don't let people rub you up the wrong way if you're a task person, and vice versa. We're all different, but all part of the body of Christ. So let's pray that God would work within us and increasingly through God's Spirit make us to be more like Jesus. That the church may be the church of Jesus Christ in the truest sense. That would be such an attractive body of people to belong to. So God bless you. Thank you so much for listening today.